I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with leaders and innovators who make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Alex Chi, Chief Executive Officer of PontoSense. On today's episode, we'll discuss the opportunities for sensors in the automotive and smart home markets. We hope you enjoy this episode. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Grayson, how's it going today?
I'm happy to have you here because sensors are the future. Personally, I think what you're building is really cool and it's going to play a vital role in society, especially as we all get older, because we're all going to get old at some point.
Not me.
No? All right, so you'll be the superhero. You'll outlive us all. You'll figure out the anti-aging. To kick things off, what is PontoSense?
You know, we're an engineering-focused company focused on building wireless sensors. And it's our belief that, sensors or medical-grade accurate sensors should not be a wearable. It should not be, always a camera and, those type of devices. It should be something that you can achieve, good data and good results ambiently as well. So PontoSense is really focused on the mission of saving lives, prolonging health, and enhancing lives through the use of wireless sensing technologies.
Why make a medical grade sensor? You have a lot of sensors that don't meet that standard. Why did you decide to go for a medical grade standard?
Medical grade accuracy. So comparable with, medical devices. I think if the sensor is not accurate, it's basically like a mood ring, right? Like you're not really getting I can tell you what your heart rate is without medical grade accuracy, right? It really depends on, what objective you're trying to achieve with this type of technology. And there's a few out there that I'm sure we'll go into today, but really, I think, we're not aiming for a medical sensor. That's a very different topic. We're aiming for something that performs at a very high level and something that's going to give you very, very good data.
So what would be an example of a use case there? Would it be used in the automotive market? Would it be used in the smart home market? What's an example of how a sensor would be used?
Yeah, so, we internally have three tenets for kind of the use case conundrum. So the first thing is it should be a pretty big and growing market, right? It's something that I think a lot of people are touched by, ideally. The second thing is something that doesn't really have an industry that doesn't really have substitutes. Because I think, Grayson, I feel like this, but if you can use a camera, you'll use a camera. If you can use a wearable, you use a wearable, right? People are used to these habits. They don't want to change them. So it should be an industry where you don't really have another choice. And then the third way we're really viewing it is something that has a lot of urgency. So it's also good to have something in 5 years or 10 years, but it's better if, there's some sort of regulation that makes things urgent for companies and customers. So the use case for automotive is really around a few different ones. Like the first thing that we're looking at is really detecting kids left in hot cars. It's a very popular topic. We are the first to go into mass production. We are right now the only ones that's still in mass production for this type of devices in vehicles. But looking forward, you're really measuring, the driver and passenger vitals to understand more about their physical behaviors. So, for example, are they drowsy? Are they going under a certain number of stress? Is there alcohol detected? Is there motion sickness detected? Those are all really important use cases, especially when the car's autonomous, right? How do you tell a driverless car to slow down if you're not feeling too well? So those are different things that, we look at within the automotive industry.
The detecting kids in cars is really important as we go into the summer, and unfortunately this year NHTSA will release data about the children that have perished in a hot car, and it's really, truly sad, and it's a crime. When your sensor detects children in a car, or let's say a dog, for example, as well, because there's those incidents as well, can the auto manufacturer have it turn on the air conditioner or to give some sort of air so that child unfortunately does not pass away?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think, they can do that. They can also roll down the windows. That's another popular one. They can honk the horn or maybe raise the alarm. But there is like a state system application usually attached to those type of use cases. And it's a really unfortunate thing, right? In the US, we're looking at on average a child a week that passes away from being left accidentally in a hot car, or at least, we hope accidentally in a hot car. Around the world is probably many kids a day, that pass away, unfortunately. So, Euro NCAP, American NCAP, China NCAP, all have these regulations coming out in the next couple of years that's going to stipulate to have a 5-star rating, you have to have this feature. So that's something that's on top of, OEMs' minds. It's something that's on top of tier one's minds, and we're hoping to help them get to that stage.
The bottom line is you should do it because it's good business, not because the regulatories are doing it. It's good business, and from an economic standpoint, it becomes a selling point to the individual to buy the vehicle. How many sensors do you have to put in the vehicle to do occupant detection? Do you have to strategically place them throughout the vehicle, or how does that work?
In most cases, it's one per vehicle. For larger vehicles or special edge cases, you may look at two, but for most vehicles, one's enough. And I think you bring up a good point, Grace, and I think it's about business at the end of the day, right? And OEMs and car companies, they really care about money. So I think another thing that we're looking at and we're thinking about is, if you deploy this sensor, can you save some money? Like, where can you save money in the car? Where can you replace certain things? So like weight sensors, for example, right? Or maybe that front seat occupancy classification sensor for airbags, you can save that as well. So, given the cost of our device or our sensor module and how much we can save, we can actually, car companies can actually save money by deploying our product, which is something that's a little bit crazy to think about, but we believe it to be true.
Before we get into the autonomous side of the house, the human-driven vehicle today, you can talk about detecting vitals if the individual's drowsy or are under the influence. Is there a way that you can tie that to insurance? Hey, look, I don't drive when I'm drowsy. I don't drive when I'm stressed out. Or that they can somehow translate to an insurance savings?
That is a loaded question. It's a very good question. I think the story is going to be, it's going to be dependent on probably the insurance and OEM level. There's a few different questions baked in there. Number one is, where is this whole industry going with insurance? Right? If you ask like the big insurance companies, the thing they're most worried about is that insurance is pivoting towards OEMs. Like Tesla will have their own insurance and other companies will have their own insurance as well. So you may not get your insurance from like Allstate, you may get it from somebody else in the future. So that's going to change things. And number two is going to be like exactly like you said, which is, by understanding your driving habits, am I able to understand you better as, you know, as an owner of the car, right? The telematics piece is really critical. Right now, all they know is probably your gender, your income, where you live, those type of things, right? But they're not going to know, you know, that you're constantly stressed and you suffer through road rage when you're driving a vehicle, right? But they'll do that. They'll have that data accessible in the future, and just how they use it. And the third piece is obviously that privacy piece, right? People don't really enjoy necessarily getting their vitals read, but it's something that I think if they're saving money and it's going towards a more safe and life-saving environment, then I think that makes a lot of sense going forward for these car companies and insurance companies.
When you look at the insurance, Tesla can properly price the risk because they're getting all the driving data, and then they can backstop that with a reinsurer or partner with a class one insurer because they're getting all that data. The vehicles are spitting off more and more data, which can help properly price the risk. And the other big trend that's evolving in insurance now is liability. If you're going to ride an autonomous vehicle, God bless the insurance company. They're going to figure out a way to insure it. Oh, we'll sell you a liability, and if you leave your laptop there, don't worry, that's insured. We'll replace it if you pay X dollars per fee. What I think is really neat about your device, so let's just a hypothetical, we're in an SAE level 4 vehicle, fully driverless, and I'm starting not to feel well. I'm getting woozy. Could pass out, could not pass out. Can the sensor step in the situation, say, okay, the occupant in the vehicle, something's not right. Perhaps we reroute it to a hospital, or in the case that individual's having a heart attack or some sort of medical emergency, notify the hospital, hey, inbound patient, something's not right, to save a life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't say that we're going to step in and do anything, because that's a lot of risk that we wouldn't take on necessarily as Ponto Sense. But your car, absolutely, that's what we're looking at, right? And I think it's not even like life-threatening injuries. I think that's probably what we classify as like a class 3 emergency. Like, let's just say you're not feeling well. Like, you're just, you're working on your laptop, you're reading a book or something in the car, you're just getting some motion sickness. And instead of that car like weaving in and out of traffic and going crazy, and maybe it prioritizes a slower lane but a more stable lane for you to drive on, hoping to ease some of those concerns. So there's a lot of like benefits for the driver and the passenger, without the need to go into such an emergency thing. I think that carries a lot of risk. It's just that you're not having a heart attack, and you're just like, you came back from the gym, you're feeling pretty good, your heart rate is elevated, right? And misdiagnoses you, and instead of taking you to like Jamba Juice, straight to the hospital, right? No one wants that. So I would say probably getting good data, like we said at the onset, is getting medical grade accurate data, and then allowing the car to then make a decision, or at least allow you to prompt the car to make a decision to where to go next.
Yeah, because I think about that, if that individual is unfortunately having a heart attack, and somebody comes on, an operator comes on in the car and says, "Hello, passenger, are you okay?" No response, and they go through whatever it's called the approved handbook is, and then they make that decision. Okay, after three times, reroute it. That's interesting because if you look at the data, the amount of individuals that have a medical condition that either crash into a bicyclist or get into a crash, it's rather scarily high that happens. And this is a potential solution to save lives and save a lot of money from an economic disaster standpoint. Is one of the main selling points of Ponto Sense to the OEMs and the tier ones safety?
Absolutely. I think, as a society, I think that's everybody's number one priority. If you can save lives, that's probably the most value you can provide for the world, right? I think that's at the apex. But I would say, just to jump onto that, Grayson, I think there's probably a few other things that OEMs would use us for as well. Um, Safety will be probably up there. Number one, I'll put it, and then number two, number three, number four, things like how to monetize better, how to do car as a service better. Like, do I know who is in the car, right, when they're using it? Maybe someone took your Zipcar card and swiped it in a different vehicle. They know that it's you, right? Or can they provide additional services in the vehicle to make your experience better? And those are all things that car companies are looking into in the next few years. And this trend's coming. The car's going to look very different in 5-6 years than it does today.
Do you view it almost as, this is an analogy of Apple's Face ID, where it becomes a verification layer, says, "Hello, Alex, welcome to car," and it verifies you, and I'm going to use the term, unlocks the car, but unlocks the phone essentially.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I would say there's probably better technologies to do that. Going back to that whole substitute thing, I think cameras will do a much better job of doing that than radar would. But radar does provide you with some additional features that maybe, unlocking the car wouldn't be the strict use that I would go to. But things like, for example, understanding your stress levels and things like that, or at least knowing, like, okay, someone that's, 6'1", male, that's potentially this weight is entered the vehicle. Like, we almost consider like private identification rather than for sure pinpointing that it's you. We think it's you, and that's enough for you to enter the car. And that's kind of what we're looking into, because I think we're all about privacy. We're all about that level of, can we use this to understand, in a broad view, who you are and why you've gotten access to this vehicle.
That makes sense because consumers are tired of being recorded, both audio and video, on a daily basis, and you're seeing some pushback there in Congress on it. From a technical standpoint, how does your technology work?
It's a great question. So, we use millimeter wave, more specifically the 60 gigahertz frequency. So in terms of kind of RF and radar, what we're doing is, we're bouncing, radio waves off your body, and we're receiving that. And at the same time, hundreds of times per second, bouncing it off, receiving it, bouncing off, receiving it. I almost think of it. I just watched this movie the other night, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. It's almost like Predator. You know how the Predator can sense, like, it can't see anything,
Yes.
right? but it knows, like, your heat level. It kind of see your heart beating and those type of things. That's what it is. It's not like a camera based or image based technology, but it's fine tuned to a sense that we can really understand micro movements as small as your heart beating through your chest. So much like, bats and dolphins use sonar or sound, we use millimeter wave to get that image, essentially. So in short, that's what we do. That's how we can maintain a lot of the privacy associated with the individual, but at the same time understand a lot more about your health and, in general, who you are as a person.
So what if I get in the car, I cover myself in mud as Arnold did in the Predator movie? Can you see me? Yeah, he covered himself in mud when he hit the Predator.
We've never tested that use case, but we can't penetrate metal, humans, or water and those type of things. So anything that's like fabric or clothing, or we can go through those things like no big deal. So unless the mud's covering literally every single inch of your body, I would say that you're still moving. And I would actually say, depending on the composition of the mud, I mean, I don't want to go into the chemistry of mud here, but probably depending on kind of how that mud's constructed, there might be ways for us to measure that as well. Yeah, I think in short, you would probably be able to see somebody covered in mud in a vehicle.
Well, that's a good thing. They're coming back from Burning Man. Your system's going to work. So that's a very
I
good
was told
thing
not to
there.
use a predator analogy, I think, but that's how I see the world. So I think,
I like it.
yeah,
It was a good movie. It had Jesse Ventura in there. Went on to become governor of Minnesota.
yeah.
So we're still talking about that movie today. Where's the data stored? Is it stored on the edge in the vehicle? Is it uploading to the cloud, or where's the data flowing off of your sensors?
It's all computed on the edge. I think that's a really important thing to distinguish here. You heard all these horror stories about Teslas getting lost in the wild and no coverage and kind of getting stuck there a little bit. The data has to be computed on the edge, mostly for response time, cost, and also even things like privacy. So the data is all on the edge. The data is then fed to the vehicle. So a lot of what we do is, we are the eyes / stethoscope for the vehicle itself. So they make their decisions, right? They have their own paths, and we make sure that we can give them the data. There's a lot of things now, legally speaking, around data ownership, data storage. That's one thing where, car companies never had to deal with that before, right? If you look back a few years, you buy a car, it doesn't like capture all these things about you. But that's going to be happening in the next few years about how to, legislate around data ownership and data storage. But we compute everything on the edge, and we make sure that we work with the OEMs to ensure that no data is leaked or lost in that process.
And what type of power, as society shifts towards electric vehicles, power concern becomes a very big issue. Are you able to compute this at low power on the edge?
Yeah, yeah. 10 milliwatts or so. It's extremely low power. Someone asked me the other day what 10 milliwatt looks like, and I told them that if you take a 40-watt light bulb, it's one. My math's gonna be bad here. 1/4000th of that power requirement. The main thing for electrical vehicle on the power side is actually going to be the heating. That's going to be the main switch, right? Because I think how they do heating now is like you take the engine heat and they kind of radiate that through the vehicle. But our power requirement is extremely low. So I wouldn't say low enough they can leave this like in a parking lot and run it for like a month. They can run it for like a week without any big issues.
You're not going to have an impact on range. That's the bottom line.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. No. We're gonna fit right in that mindset. Actually, a lot of the OEMs that we work with are EVs. Because EVs, they tend to adopt faster, they can produce faster, their SOP cycles faster. So, a lot of our customers that we are in market with today are all electrical vehicles. And we do have some other OEMs that are more traditional that will be launching a little bit later.
When you're in the market with your OEM customers, is the sensor hidden into the design of the vehicle? Does it have to be exposed to work? How does that look for me? I'm a driver. I'm a passenger. Do I just see this big sensor, or is it hidden? What does it look like?
You put it so elegantly. No, you don't want to see like a big sensor protruding, aim right at you.
I'd be worried the predator's
It's
coming.
it's hidden in like the overhead console. That's one location. So where you put your sunglasses, like up top. Yeah, it's sometimes placed there. It's placed sometimes in the headliner, but it's always behind some sort of like plastic or cloth or some sort of covering. It's built into the vehicle itself. We work directly with OEMs, but yeah, I would be. I mean, I'm personally like very neurotic about being filmed or recorded. So I definitely don't want to have that there. We're like a state system device. So basically, you can think of it as almost like an airbag. Like it's something that's built into the vehicle's core. So it's definitely part of the vehicle composition. It's hidden in the end.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Listen, you're creating value. You're doing good, and you're not being intrusive to the overall design, which I think is a win-win. So you're in the automotive market. You're doing great things. You have OEM relationships in that market. Another market you're focused on is the smart home market. Why?
I just think if you think about a sensor that measures people's vitals, or I would say micro movements wirelessly, I wouldn't think cars as my first market, right? But The reason why we started with that, and that's why, the reason why we're also a big player in that is because it just has this urgent use case around, children left in hot cars and also autonomous vehicles and those type of things. But if you really think about where this is going to do a lot of good in the world, it's really going to be in that home space, right? And again, going back to the non-replacement portion of things, like if you think about where accidents happen in the home, whether it's, there's four main danger zones kind of thing. It's kitchen, stairs, bathroom, and bedroom. Well, you can have cameras in the stairs and kitchen, but I think normal, sane people probably would not have cameras in bedrooms and bathrooms, right? There's probably a few jokes you can insert in there that I won't go into. But
It'd be odd if you did. Maybe you're in a different industry if you read between
yeah,
the lines on that one.
yeah. But definitely, I think people wouldn't have that. So if you don't have that, right? If you don't have cameras, how do you detect someone that's fell down in a bathroom, for example? Like, what are the possibilities, right? You maybe have like this floor sensor where literally the entire floor is like, weight sensor activated. That could be an extreme case of doing it, but that's really expensive. You probably can't have infrared, right? So, there's something called Wi-Fi motion that's debuting, but I think, jury's still out on kind of how and if that ever, does things like fall detection. But I do think that this sensor, what we're doing now, we can definitely do like a room level accuracy. And based on what you said, Grayson, everybody's getting older. One day, we're all going to need to live either in our own homes or nursing homes, and we got to be safe, right? So this is something that can keep people safe and save a bunch of lives and have a very impactful story out there.
Is this also going into nursing homes, retirement homes, or are you focused on the age in place policies that are starting to pop up? Japan, for example, is a country with a large age in place population.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're working with a few different partners to make that happen. But personally speaking, I'm more for aging in place because I do think that's where the market's going. I think people generally want to live in their own homes if they could. They've been living there for like 10, 20 years. They probably don't want to spend the twilight of their years living in, a random place. But I do think that there is a need for nursing homes. I don't think that model will go away because it's just that some people require more care and those around them don't have that option. So, in Japan, for example, we do see a combination of both. There is a trend towards, people that maybe have like son, a grandson, or granddaughter that can help them a little bit in their daily life. And those people may want to live by themselves. But then if you don't have that support network, maybe you do need to work or live rather in a retirement home. So we are good in both markets. But I would say that trend wise is generally going towards aging in place.
And what does it connect to? Yeah, the clap or help I fell down, that went to a call center. You have various different devices, either through your security companies that go to a call center. What are your sensors connected? Does it connect to a loved one, for example, that regularly checks in on that individual? Or what's that point to notify somebody, hey, grandma fell down?
Yeah, so this particular product is launching early next year. But to give you kind of a summary of what that looks like for the retirement homes, it's going to go towards like a switchboard, right? Much like, if you live in a retirement home now and you need help, you may press a button. So that alerts, the nursing station that this particular room has an issue. It'll do the same thing, but it might do that automatically if it detects something going on. In the aging in place side of things, it will be kind of an app monitor, loved one support, but also as well as, if things go and pushes towards something more severe, then you will, either target towards a call center in the local, ISP, or it may in extreme cases go directly to some sort of, rapid SOS type of, emergency services.
Do you also see this being used in potential security applications? Let's say you have multiple homes and you're not at home. There's not supposed to be anybody in there. You get an alert, hey, there's somebody in your home.
I wouldn't say that's the best use case for what we do. That's like a great Wi-Fi motion thing, right? Because just someone's moving my house that shouldn't be moving. That's like a perfect Wi-Fi motion use case because it's a whole home coverage. We're more around like a room level coverage. So in terms of like presence and those type of things, we're looking around 10 meters, 30 feet or so, which is like a normal room size, right? If you really think about it, a room is just like a big car instead of maybe less people in the room, but than a car. But generally, you're looking at confined space with a finite number of people. That's what we do. So in terms of security, I would personally go with cameras. We were sharing a story earlier about someone that you knew that went with cameras. I think cameras would be a great choice for that. Wi-Fi motion would be a great choice for that. Infrared would be a great choice for that. There's a lot of inexpensive tools to leverage out there.
What was the inspiration behind Ponto Sense? Did you have an aha moment? Did you build something? Because the fact that you're getting the vitals and you're getting all this data to me is very interesting, and it seems like there's something more to than just, hey, I'm going to build this.
Yeah, I mean, this is where, that engineering focus background really came into play. I think we have to have two ingredients. The first is the capability to do this, and the second thing is probably the spark to do this, which is kind of what you're alluding to. I think from a capability side, I think, the founding team has 500 patents. It's most my co-founder, to be honest. He has 500. It's like me saying that, Michael Jordan and myself have 6 championships. But yeah, no, he's one of the leading engineers in the world. I think, he's really good at doing this. So we've always had the capability to do this, which is unique to us. But in terms of Spark, I think there's a lot of cases where we see out there in the world. I remember going to CES with him. This was before the pandemic. So this was like 2019, I want to say, 2020. We're just walking the floor. We're going to check on different things. And we saw a lot of technologies around saving lives and around, elderly care and remote care. And we thought it was kind of cool. There's a lot of these patches you can wear as well and things like that. Just kind of like interesting things, right? But then we got to thinking, it's like, what's a use case for that? You gotta like wake up and put a patch on. Like, unless you're a smoker, there's probably not a lot of like, pre-embedded, muscle memory for putting patches on every day. So we walked around and we're like, okay, there's gotta be a better way to do this. So then we got to the drawing board. We thought about how big is this industry? What's the market size look like? And what's going to be the application for it? We really came out with, wireless sensing. This was like 2020. And then we, incorporated the company in 2021 and, off to the races. But it really kind of came to fruition when we were looking at these things. We're like, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way than to wear a pendant if you're an elderly, like wear a pendant around your neck for like days or months. I just don't feel like that's the best way to go forward. So it came out of our engineering capability mixed with kind of where we saw an inefficiency in the market.
Yeah, there's a big. You just got a big inefficiency. There's this Nicorette gum. You got to put the patch on. This muscle memory, but having to wear this thing is cumbersome. You forget. Oh, grandma didn't put it around her neck today, and we had a problem. And so you're solving that issue, and you're making it easier. So you have the car market today. You have the quote unquote smart home market. What market's next for your sensors?
I feel like those are pretty big markets, Grayson. I think. But going forward, I do think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to expand to markets where we see a need to understand more about human behavior. I think one of the coolest things that we've been able to do at Ponto Sense is vitals isn't that useful for an individual. Like if I tell you what your heart rate is right now, cool, it's a number to you, right? It doesn't really mean that much. But what's more important is really understanding, based on those vitals, am I able to understand more about you, right? Are you under a lot of stress? Are you feeling anxiety? Are you feeling relaxed? Are you, experiencing, motion sickness and those type of things? So there could be a lot of like, therapeutic, use cases around something like this going forward, where we're really allowing you as an individual to understand more about your, mental state and more about your, physiological health. And those are extremely interesting markets for us to pursue. This was like a few months ago, but I was at a dinner with a friend, and kind of, he was pitching like this could be like a guided meditation thing, right? Where, hey, Grayson, I noticed that you're feeling a lot of stress right now. We got to lower that down to a certain number. Let's go do some deep breathing exercises. And after like 5 minutes, it's like, okay, we've gone down halfway. Let's do another halfway here. And it could be a lot of those type of things where it really allows you to understand more about your own health and those type of things. And we can see this going into personal devices. We can see this going into like consumable devices. Anything that allows you to understand more about this. Office furniture shares, for example, that was like a crazy use case that one company pitched us, where they were like, I'm hosting a meeting. I want to know who's paying attention in this meeting, right? So I have the sensor measure concentration and those type of things, so I can know exactly who's like on board with that. My initial thought was like, interesting use case. Now we've got to talk about privacy concerns, but interesting use case nevertheless. So those are a lot of those things where going forward you can have those type of things be unlocked by this type of technology.
Sneaky. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Think about that in negotiation. You know who's into it and who's not into it. And then you know who, if you're getting the data in real time, you know who to target and break to win the negotiation. It gives you a competitive advantage at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a lot of those type of things, right? I think that's where, as an organization, one of the things that, we are looking into is how do we vertically integrate and allow, other companies out there to leverage and use our sensors and our technology. I don't think that we would, single-handedly, put our fingers into every single industry out there. But hey, if you're making office share in your, steel case, you can leverage this type of device for your own engineering team. So a lot of what we're working on now and kind of what we're expanding in the next, 12 to 18 months is going to be how do we, package up our strengths? How do we package up these advantages on innovation that we have and allow other companies to then develop more on top of that? And that's a really big, step on the business side that we have going forward.
On the business side, is the end goal to be a licensor where you'll license to steel case, or do you want to actually manufacture and sell the sensor to those companies?
We do manufacture now, but I would say the long-term goal is to probably do a mix of both. I think manufacturing is such a headache. I think like it's not easy. I think if you make one sensor, it's easy, or you make 10 sensors is easy, but to make like 15,000 or something a month, it's a lot harder. So I would say probably it's a mix of both. Right now, our manufacturing capacity goes up to 500,000 modules every month. So that's our peak right now that we can do. Obviously, we're not at that peak yet. So I would say it's probably a mix of both. And I think if you ask anybody in the organization, I think licensing would be a great opportunity, right? Especially you can allow these larger companies who have huge scale to be able to capture more of that profit as well. That's the nice thing to have. So we'd love to do that. And if they don't have that manufacturing capability themselves, we'd love to do it for them as well. So I think we're open to both ways.
When you're open to both ways, it's going to, the path of least resistance will open itself up one day. That's going to allow you to scale. Because if you're just purely licensing this and you're focusing on it with your colleague and co-founder with 500 plus patents, he can become the mad scientist and build stuff up all day, and then you can become the mad licenser, and you've got a heck of a business with not a lot of headaches of dealing with global manufacturing and supply chains.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it just depends on the customer, right? So a lot of OEMs probably wouldn't license. They'd rather you produce it and just ship them the sensor, right? They even prefer that you ship the casing or the integration piece that goes along with that sensor. They prefer you ship them the whole thing. So it depends on the customer. And a lot of tier ones, they rather produce it themselves because there's a higher margin for them from a pure dollar standpoint there. So they rather do that. So it depends on who you're working with. And I think to your point, Grayson, if you're flexible, it's always easier in the long run.
Yeah, and then it allows you to build a great business. What we do know is that sensors are coming. They're going to be they're almost in everything. They're going to be in more things. You described chairs. Perhaps they'll be in kitchens and know, okay, is the chef's stressed out? Is he not going to use this knife properly? We don't know. They're going to be everywhere at some point. Alex, in your opinion, what does the future of sensors look like? Is there any interesting new technology that you see emerging, interesting use cases you see emerging? What is that future going to look like?
Well, one big thing that's on everybody's mind now is going to be collecting different use cases and building these multi-use sensors. So ideally, a sensor doesn't just do one thing. It's able to do many different things. So that multi-use approach is really, really critical going forward. I think, there are some automotive executives who's come out and said, hey, I want to reduce the number of sensors in my vehicles by 2/3, right? And they're not just trying to save money. It's not just like them thinking that this is a purely cost-based measure, but it's also the flexibility of having, more applications built onto this foundation. So I think when you think about sensors going forward, I think there's actually consolidation of sensors. There's gonna be a lot less single-use sensors out there. So that, that patch or whatever it is, it better do some other magic tricks along the way as well. I think that's kind of where things are going to. So in the smart home, for example, right? it's not just about fall detection. It's maybe going to be a little bit about health. It's going to be about tracking your movements. It's going to be about, hey, knowing kind of who you are. Maybe you enter into a room, they know it's Grayson, and they know Grayson likes a room cold, and your partner likes a room hot. And depending on who it is, we can adjust the temperature in the room as well. There's going to be a lot of those type of multi-use for sensors moving forward. So that's a huge innovation. And the other one is obviously going to be going wireless ambient. If you can go wireless, go wireless. Like, I think there's a reason why we don't have landlines anymore, right? So that's a big thing, I think, for sensors, is that consolidation use cases.
The consolidation will be interesting to watch. I agree with you with the multi-use sensors. We're seeing that in refrigeration and energy, especially as it relates to grocery stores trying to save money on their energy. And consolidations is coming to sensors. It's coming to autonomy, and it's coming to a variety of industries, especially as we go into a potential economic downturn. Alex, as we look to wrap up this insightful conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today?
I think, what we wanted to really communicate, I think, we touched on this, Grayson, a little bit as well, is really kind of where these industries are going. There's a lot of possibilities out there. And I think the trends that are happening today with, generative AI and those things, they've been cooking for the past, 4 or 5 years. I think what we're doing now with sensing solutions, even though we have deployment now, we're in market now, this is something where, the world's going to be very different in 4 or 5 years from today. And these sensors are going to be a big part of that story. And I think the listeners, obviously, they're all going to be very smart about this. They're all always going to know about this, but it's also a process to figure things out. I think anybody that says they know everything about this market and all the potential risk is for sure bluffing. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet, like, for example, how the data privacy laws are going to come into play. And we have our own viewpoints, but at the end of the day, it's you got to save lives, you got to protect people, and if you can do those things, then you have something good on your hands. I think that's our mantra, through and through.
You're doing good. That's the most important part. You're doing good for society. You said it so elegantly. The possibility for sensors is endless. You can go from sports fitness training to saving lives in cars to saving grandma's life at a home to lowering your refrigeration bill. The possibility for sensors is endless. Today is tomorrow. Tomorrow is today. The future is PontoSense. Alex, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you, Grayson. And it was nice talking to you.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, when I'm joined by Dr. Rodney McGee, chairman of the newly formed SAE J3400 NACS Task Force, and Christian Thiele, director, Global Ground Vehicle Standards, SAE International. They'll discuss the evolution of industry standards in the electric vehicle sector.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.